Hello and welcome to HeirHeads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And welcome to the HeirHeads bus service. We've taken inspiration from James Corden this week, so...
Tom's role model.
Pay your fare, get your tickets, and let us show you the highlights of this week's royal landscape.
Ding, ding, ding! Okay, Mr. Conductor, where's our first stop?
First stop is the Wild Wild West.
Yeehaw! Rope 'em and ride!
The Mirror had a great exclusive last week. Here's the headline. Queen wants to move on from Meghan and Harry with new dawn for Magnificent Seven. Royal sources have revealed to the Mirror that the Queen apparently wants to draw a line under this tumultuous period. Now that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's departure from the royal family has been finalised, the Queen, quote, considers the matter closed.
Oh my god, I rest my case.
She is ready to saddle up. She's locked and loaded for a new beginning for the royals, even going so far as to give the go-ahead for the 7 remaining senior royals to take up public engagements as soon as possible.
Why do these people keep needing the Queen to say, right, as soon as possible, let's get to business? I mean, describing this as an exclusive is so funny because we've been hearing the Queen, like, trying to get these people to do some work for fucking ages.
Well, now we've got some new branding. The
Right.
Magnificent Seven.
Saddle up! Cha! Ride!
What a striking rebrand. This is coming from palace officials speaking about Prince Charles, Camilla Parker Bowles, Prince William, Kate Middleton, Princess Anne, Prince Edward and Sophie Wessex. They're your Magnificent Seven, Tom.
Yeehaw.
It is hoped that they will put on a united front to herald a new dawn for the monarchy. Well, Tom?
It's so funny. I mean, no matter how many names you give these people, it's still just the only people who are left in the firm who can work.
It's such a desperate ploy to make something incredibly stale seem fresh.
Yeah, by using this Magnificent Seven, the name of a film that came out, 50 years ago?
Well, the Fab Four wasn't working anymore. And they had to get in Edward and Sophie, the jewels and the crown.
We should move on to the next stop, though. Do you want to go ding ding?
Ding ding!
Attention, this bus is on diversion. The next stop will be the Middle East.
The whole Middle East.
All of the Middle East. Because we're going to make a quick stop to talk about Prince Andrew.
Just to refresh everyone's memories, in case anyone could have forgotten, Prince Andrew famously photographed in 2010 walking in Central Park with his good buddy, convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, after which Andrew lost his role as the UK's trade envoy.
The purpose of this trade envoy role was to promote British trade abroad, and it seems as though Andrew was what The Guardian described as the UK's secret weapon for many in government and business when it came to securing arms deals in the Middle East.
The reason we're talking about this is because a publication called Declassified UK ran an extensive series of reports this week on Prince Andrew's links to regimes in the Gulf, and they talk a lot about how a lot of this stems from his time as UK trade envoy and after, but at the time, a Buckingham Palace spokesman defended Andrew's suitability for the role and said, Middle East potentates like meeting princes. He comes in as the son of the Queen and that opens doors. He can raise problems with the Crown Prince and we later discover that the difficulties have been overcome and the contract can be signed.
It's great that someone can have such influence over such monumental figures. Maybe Andrew could use that influence to do some real good, or maybe he could use it to help out arms dealers. Which is actually what he did.
It's crazy though to get a quote like this from the palace, isn't it? I feel like they wouldn't say anything like this now. They've really locked down.
Yeah, well, I think at the time the palace was under quite a lot of pressure because Andrew had been linked both to Epstein and also the son-in-law of a Tunisian dictator. So there were a lot of people saying, should Andrew really be representing the UK anywhere?
I know. And I mean, like, obviously we don't really expect the royals to have this moral compass when it comes to things like arms dealing or pretty much anything else.
Yeah, they've been involved in it all at some point.
And they do have a long-standing relationship with the Saudi royal family. However, the timing of the events detailed in this declassified investigation should raise a few eyebrows.
Yeah, so in 2011, Andrew loses his trade envoy role, but according to Declassified, despite the announcement, little changed, with government ministers allowing him to honour a number of pre-existing overseas diary commitments until the end of the year. And this included a rescheduled trip to Saudi Arabia and also Qatar and the United Arab Emirates.
Accounts from the palace show Andrew's flights for these trips cost the public purse £95,000 and that the Foreign Office and Trade Ministry covered his accommodation and other expenses.
So he wasn't exactly out of pocket as a result of this. But the reason the trip had been rescheduled was to avoid the peak of the Arab Spring, which was a series of pro-democracy protests in Arab countries, and they were often violently suppressed. And because the protests were drawing attention to these autocratic regimes in the Gulf, many of Andrew's meetings with Gulf royals and government officials in the UK had to be conducted in private, so in people's homes.
In particular, Andrew had a lot to do with Bahraini officials. Like, he visited Crown Prince Salman at his London residence shortly after Bahrain security forces, supported by neighbouring Saudi Arabia using British-made military equipment, had just crushed massive pro-democracy protests, killing more than 40 people.
And this is the same Crown Prince Salman who was invited to Will and Kate's wedding, which was around this time. He turned down the invitation, which was probably a wise move.
Pretty lucky for Will and Kate.
Yeah. But Andrew rounded off 2011 by meeting the King of Bahrain in London's Four Seasons Hotel. And as Declassified put it, by then the leaders of Bahrain's pro-democracy movement had been sentenced to life imprisonment by a military court, and 559 Bahrainis were accusing the regime of torturing them.
But Andrew has a particularly strong relationship with the Bahrainis, and Declassified points out, together with the Queen, Andrew has attended the Royal Windsor Horse Show 7 times since 2013, routinely sitting with Bahrain's King Hamad.
And we'll talk more about his relationship with Bahrain later. But after he lost this official role, it seems like the only real difference was that from April 2012, the Trade Department no longer held a specific budget to fund his work. And they said, in future, the associated costs of official overseas travel by the Duke will be met by the Foreign Office in the same way as for other members of the royal family. So, like, an example of that is in November 2014. So this is, 3 years after he had to step away from his role officially. He was sent by the Foreign Office to Saudi Arabia, and the flights cost taxpayers £43,000.
It's just nuts. And those of you who have been following the Andrew story closely may have heard 2014 and remembered that that was the same year that court filings in Florida showed that Virginia Roberts Giuffre alleged she was forced to have sex with Andrew during Andrew's friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Still, that didn't stop Andrew participating in all of this UK diplomacy with Saudi Arabia.
According to Declassified, in March 2018, he joined a major Foreign Office public relations drive to welcome Saudi Arabia's new Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, otherwise known as MBS, to London and portray him as a moderniser. So he met MBS with the Queen for lunch at Buckingham Palace, and then later that year, Andrew received the Saudi ambassador at Buckingham Palace as well. This was in September. A week after that meeting, Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi was killed in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul for his criticism of MBS.
And maybe you're wondering, surely Andrew must have had a good reason for meeting all these people. And his reason was that he wanted to expand his pitch at palace scheme into Saudi Arabia.
Jesus Christ. I mean, obviously, unsurprisingly, this sparked a lot of criticism from people like Amnesty International. And there's a great quote from the time, which was, Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle, talking to The Independent, he said, Prince Andrew's open call for doing business with a man who has just ordered the murder and dismemberment of a journalist hits a new low even for him.
Even for him? So funny.
But you are really spoiled for choice when you're looking for new lows for Prince Andrew in 2018.
Yeah, in April of that year, he went to Bahrain to inaugurate a new UK naval base and an academic course in security science for Bahraini police officers. This course is taught at the Royal Academy of Police's campus, which is right next to a maximum security prison where the leaders of Bahrain's pro-democracy movement are serving life sentences.
And according to the Bahrain Institute for Rights and Democracy, inmates have been taken from the prison to the police academy and subjected to interrogation and torture. While he was there on this 2018 trip, Andrew once again met King Hamad, who is his horse racing buddy, and also other leading members of the royal family, including the Interior Minister for Bahrain. And the director of the Bahrain Institute for Rights and Democracy has said it sickened him to see Prince Andrew jovially greeting the Interior Minister, given his department's track record of systematic torture. Oh, it's just absolutely sickening. Like, I really felt like, how could it get any worse after reading all the stuff about Andrew's relationship with Epstein? But this just takes it to a whole, like, new level, or gives it an extra dimension or something.
Yeah. And his last official meeting with the Gulf monarchy appears to have been in 2019, when he welcomed the new Saudi ambassador to Buckingham Palace. However, this declassified investigation noticed that as recently as last week, Andrew was listed as a patron of the Omani British Friendship Association. And that's a group that explicitly promotes UK business in Oman, highlighting its pro-enterprise laws and liberal investor-friendly policies. And it's through that role that Andrew was meeting on a yearly basis with members of the Omani royal family between 2015 and 2019.
So when Declassified viewed the group's website last week, Andrew was still listed as a patron, despite having given up loads of other roles over the Epstein stuff in 2019. Then the website appeared to be taken offline after Declassified first saw it, and they do note that you can still see an archived version of it from December where he's listed as a patron. And a Buckingham Palace spokesperson told Declassified, the Duke of York stepped back from public duties in November 2019. As such, His Royal Highness currently has no active engagement with any patronages.
Yeah, we've heard that line before.
Yeah.
I guess people listening to this, though, might think, like, why does this matter? And I think there are a few things worth pointing out. You know, one obviously is that Andrew seems to have continued doing his envoy job in all but name. And that seems to suggest that the rules around what work royals can and can't do is a lot more flexible than we have been led to believe over the last year.
Absolutely. And it also seems that he was very happy to hang out with some truly reprehensible people, as long as it was in, like, lavish homes, luxury hotels, exclusive clubs, like all these kind of environments where his status as a prince was held in, like, really high regard, which sounds so Andrew.
Yeah, and we paid for it.
Yeah, we did. I was thinking as well, because we've seen recently the British government use royals in a positive way. We had the Queen this week telling everyone to get vaccinated. But this, I think, shows the flip side of that, and that royals can be used to further much more sinister agendas, like facilitating arms deals that have a direct effect on the suppression of free speech and pro-democracy groups.
And I think as well it shows, you know, a lot of people think of Andrew as the sort of bad egg in the royal family because of his relationship with Epstein. You know, that's his private life and that's just his questionable choice of friends. That's a personal thing. That doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the royal family. But I think it shows up that he is not an anomaly within this family. This declassified investigation gives a whole load of examples that come directly from his public role, his professional life as a royal and the work that he has to do as a representative of the royal family, these relationships that he was paid to cultivate as part of his job, as much as we can say that the royal family members have a job. And Andrew was by no means the only member of the royal family to do things like this.
Yeah, the firm is in deep with all this kind of stuff. And in some ways, they're all just as bad as each other.
Ding ding!
Oh, next stop. Next stop is Windsor Castle.
We are coming up to Commonwealth Day, which is the second Monday in March, March 8th. You may remember last year's exceptionally frosty service at Westminster Abbey, which was Harry and Meghan's last royal engagement. We talked about that a lot. But this year, they can't do an in-person service, so the Queen is doing a sort of lockdown edition with a special televised broadcast to celebrate the Commonwealth.
She's going to be sharing her annual message on BBC One the day before Commonwealth Day, so that's Sunday, March 7th. And they'll be supporting appearances from the Cambridges, and we can only assume we'll get sighting of some of the other Magnificent Seven.
Yes, it's been described by the Mail as a show of unity with the monarch. And also worth pointing out that the Queen's message will be pre-recorded at Windsor Castle. She's not going to be live on air. But anyway, this show of unity, because the big headline coming out of this, of course, is that March 7th is the same day that Harry and Meghan's interview with Oprah is due to air in America. Though that will technically be like 1 a.m. in UK time, so It's not the same day. So we've seen lots of interesting headlines trying to get around that, like within hours of. When we were talking about this week, we were sort of trying to figure out how this came to pass, because according to reports, the prospect of a televised programme for Commonwealth Day instead of a live service had been under discussion since early in the year. And the Mail quoted a spokesman for Westminster Abbey who said the decision was taken jointly by the Abbey, the BBC and the royal household about 3 weeks ago.
We had asked listeners what they thought about this schedule clash. And some of you thought it was the Queen trying to upstage Harry and Meghan. Some of you thought Harry and Meghan would have known that Commonwealth Day was the day after their Oprah interview and maybe picked that date to overshadow the Queen. And a lot of you thought it was very messy on all sides, and confirms our suspicions, I suppose, that they're not coordinating their announcements or their diaries anymore.
Yeah, and I'm curious because, you know, we don't know how much say Harry and Meghan have in this Oprah interview. Like, do they get to choose what date it airs on? Is that all up to CBS? I have no idea. It does seem a little bit suspect if they did get to decide to go for that date right before Commonwealth Day, one of the biggest dates in the royal calendar. But it's also possible they didn't have any input at all, and we will probably never know.
But according to the Times, Harry and Meghan do have a say in which British broadcaster can show the Oprah interview, and as of now, it hasn't been finalised, but apparently ITV is in the lead.
Yeah, and Meghan was allegedly very eager for the BBC to air the interview, but a BBC source told The Telegraph the BBC was not involved in negotiations and said, "We won't be pulling out the checkbook for this," which is pretty rude.
Yeah.
BBC spokesperson.
It does kind of make sense to me because the BBC doesn't have ad slots, so it would make sense that ITV or Channel 4 or whoever would be like shelling out a lot of money for this because they will presumably be able to bank on very high viewing figures and therefore charge a lot more for advertising.
Yeah, I guess the thing is with the BBC that you would be guaranteed probably the highest audience share. Like if they go for Channel 4, Channel 5 and Sky were all named as well, but with those you're going to lose a significant proportion of viewers that might just be watching ITV or BBC anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, ding ding!
This bus has reached its destination. This bus terminates here. Welcome to Bel Air.
Can you tell it's been like a year since we were on a bus?
Really very telling.
I'm just missing that lovely woman's voice on the bus.
I know, I have to do it myself.
On Friday, we woke up to a little surprise that Prince Harry had appeared on James Corden's chat show in America.
Not a total surprise, because we had seen pictures of him a few weeks ago on this bus, but definitely a surprise drop. We weren't expecting it when we woke up. But why don't we go through it bit by bit?
Okay, straight away, Harry makes clear he is not playing by any royal rule books. He tells James Corden immediately that it is his first time on an open top bus. He says, we're not really allowed to.
Oh, it's such a hard life being a royal.
So many restrictions. Also, when he's asked to pay his fare, he says, you know us royals, we don't carry cash.
That's right, baby. He's still a royal.
Yeah, reminding everyone watching that he still counts himself, and you should still count him as one of the royals. I did think the afternoon tea bit was very funny when they were drinking tea on the bus and then the driver braked really suddenly and the tea set crashed and the fucking camera went off and the tea fell all over Harry and he swore.
Yeah, I like that bit because up until that moment I found the tea bit just too twee and too like calculated.
Pandering.
Yeah, very pandering to an American audience. But at that moment when it kind of clearly went a bit wrong, I was like, okay, and they kept this in. I'm on board. Ding ding.
And James Corden telling Harry to clean it up.
Yeah. Has Harry ever been asked to clean anything up before in his life?
The Fresh Prince of Bel Air bit was overlong, I thought.
Yeah.
This was when James Corden brought Harry to the house from the TV show, and Harry volunteered to rap the theme song.
Now, this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down. Now, take a minute.
Sit right there.
Sit right there.
I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called
Bel Air.
Which you've set as your ringtone now, which is lovely.
Which I cringed so hard watching. That was the first thing when I got up. Because I saw the push notification that he had done this interview, and I was reading Sky News' like very hard hitting report and expecting like a really serious conversation, so different from what James Corden usually does.
Yeah.
And then I had you saying, "Oh, Prince Harry rapped Fresh Prince of Bel Air with James Corden." I was like, "What? How did they get this tone?"
It shows how different our respective Twitter feeds are, is that you got all the hard news bits of it, and I got the Fresh Prince angle.
But this did have your favourite moment of the whole segment.
Oh yeah, I loved this. So he's talking to the owners of the Fresh Prince house, and he says,
I'm actually dying for a pee. Can I use your bathroom?
While sort of crouching over. Oh my god.
he was making it very clear that he was dying for a pee, Maeve.
This is why he needs 16 bathrooms. Because of his weak bladder.
I loved when he peeked his head out of that window as well to talk to James Corden. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, and when he was going into the house and politely meeting everyone while like desperate to go to the bathroom. But while he is in the bathroom, James Corden FaceTimes Meghan on Harry's phone. Obviously, there had to be some pre-planning involved here because Meghan is absolutely immaculate. She is the most gorgeous person to ever be on FaceTime.
Yeah. She called Harry Haz, which was a big takeaway from this. As James Corden says, I didn't know we were calling you Haz now.
And then Harry says,
No, you're not my wife, so...
So funny. Really, really good. I was like surprised, I suppose, when we started watching this. I thought that it would be like, obviously bits of it were scripted and bits of it were set up and stuff, but I didn't think that Harry would be able to like carry it off in a charming way. I guess because my most recent frame of reference for royals doing comedy was Will's Blackadder sketch, which was incredibly wooden, but I felt like
Harry's Ed Sheeran.
Oh yeah, that was really bad as well. But he really pulled this off. I loved that the way he delivered that line about "you're not being my wife" was spot on.
I think part of that is that they are obviously friends.
Yeah.
James Corden went to Harry and Meghan's wedding. They have a relationship, and they had more of that kind of banter, I suppose, between them than you would get with like Harry and a Jimmy Fallon or something.
Yeah, and although I don't like James Corden, he is very good at like creating these entertaining moments and putting people at ease and getting this kind of stuff out of them. I really liked when he was saying goodbye to Meghan and said, "All right, love." And Harry went, "All right, love."
That was really funny.
It was really good.
But then when they are back on the bus, the interview really gets underway at that point. And I did find that James Corden was surprisingly good at making Harry comfortable to talk and kind of loosening him up. Mm-hmm. The questions he asks range from kind of softball stuff to far more probing questions than I had expected. Like, he starts by asking about, like, when did Harry know that Meghan was the one? And Harry talks a little bit about dating. He says their second date, he knew. And he's asked about what's a regular day like for them now. And Harry says that it mostly revolves around Archie, but that they also cook. Rather, Meghan cooks.
Yeah, he made a point of mentioning that. I thought I was a bit taken aback.
Or they get takeaways and watch Jeopardy or Netflix in the evening. A little name drop there.
Yeah, just, our favourite streaming service, Netflix. Yeah. They have so many good shows.
Which was a nice segue then for James Corden to ask, how does Harry feel about the crown?
I was so surprised when he brought that up. I thought that was kind of very bold in a way, and I was delighted that Harry gave an answer and didn't seem like annoyed that he'd brought it up.
Yeah, and I feel like there had to have been some sort of conversation about what kind of questions he was going to ask and what Harry would answer. But yeah, Harry's answer was very good. He said,
It's fictional, but it's loosely based on the truth.
Yes.
Of course it's not strictly accurate.
Of course
it's not. But loosely...
But you do think loosely it does feel like...
It gives you a rough idea about what that lifestyle and what the pressures of putting duty and service above family and everything else, what can come from that. I'm way more comfortable with the crown than I am seeing the stories written about my family or my wife or myself.
And he made a point of emphasising that the crown was fiction, unlike the reports that are supposed to be news and claim to be factual.
Yeah. After hearing so much from palace officials and palace sources about how incensed the royal family are about the crown, I found Harry's answer to the question so refreshing. And, it made sense, especially when he got onto the comparison with the media, like you said. But very interesting to get his take on the crown all the same.
Especially after the most recent season, focusing so heavily on his parents in a rather unflattering way.
And speaking of parents, he also talked about fatherhood and how important that is to him. He talked about Archie and how his first word was crocodile.
And Harry was so proud that Archie could manage 3 syllables.
I know. And it is very impressive as a first word.
Very exotic. Harry then offers up a story about the Queen getting Archie a waffle maker for Christmas. He does a nice little impression of how you use a waffle maker and talks,
with hand gestures, yeah.
And talks about how they have beautiful organic waffles all the time now. The minute he said the word organic, my brain just went, oh fuck, here we go. And sure enough, all of the tabloids led with Meghan's organic mix.
You'd think it was like Meghan's poison. Meghan's poison waffles that she forces to British people.
And a 1-year-old baby.
James Corden also asked if the Queen knows how to use Zoom. And Harry said yes, she does. And how they've stayed in touch over Zoom with both the Queen and Philip. He had a amusing detail about how Philip just slams the laptop screen down when he's done rather than clicking leave meeting or whatever it is.
Yeah, I thought those were good stories, but also very savvy to include because they did let people know that the Queen has seen Archie. We often hear these stories about how the Queen desperately misses Archie and hasn't been able to see Archie since he was born, basically.
Yeah.
but this was a neat way of letting people know.
Yeah, and I felt like between this and the story about the waffle maker, he did more to humanise the Queen and the relationships between members of the royal family than we've seen in a really long time.
He definitely emphasised that there was a lot of warmth between himself and the Queen. He didn't mention his father or Will at all.
Yeah.
James Corden did mention Will very briefly, but Harry's reaction to that was hard to read.
Yeah. But he talked about what he wants to do post-lockdown and how he thinks it'll be similar to the work that he and Meghan did back in the UK. He said, "My life is always going to be about public service, and Meghan has signed up to that, and both of us enjoy doing it."
When I heard this, I just thought, like, God, they really kind of have to work together forever now. Like, they just come as a unit.
Yeah. Do you think in like a more obvious way than Will and Kate?
No, just in a way that is quite uncommon outside of royal life.
Yeah.
But then it gets to the sort of shock moment of the interview, or what was certainly shocking to me, that James Corden like straight up asks Harry about walking away from the royal family and what a monumental decision that was. And Harry makes a point of saying it was never walking away.
It was stepping back rather than stepping down.
Right.
It was a really difficult environment, as I think a lot of people saw. We all know what the British press can be like. And it was destroying my mental health. I was
Really?
like, this is toxic.
Yeah.
So I did what any husband and what any father would do, is like, I need to get my family out of here.
So he's doing things that we've kind of heard from him already, where he's putting the blame squarely on the press.
Yeah.
He's not talking about his family. He's underscoring that it was his decision,
Yeah.
not Meghan.
Yeah.
And he's talking about mental health, which is still very rare from a royal.
Especially for a royal to be talking about their own mental health in such a candid way. They, Will is very happy to talk about, mental health in general or as a more abstract topic or, as it affects other people, but not so much himself. The grand finale of the show, though, was the obstacle course.
I couldn't believe that they did this. I kept thinking, like, there's got to be some way where they'll, like, fake out and they won't actually have to do it. Like, presumably Harry knew that this was going to be part of it and knew that he would be able to manage it, because it was stunning. What a display.
I know, when he shimmied up that rope and hit the bell.
That was unreal.
Yeah.
And when he crawled through the mud without getting any on his t-shirt.
Amazing, yeah.
The javelin, like, all of it.
I can barely get through a meal without getting food all down my t-shirt. And he's capable of doing that. Fair play to him.
It was such a strong showcase of, like, hot hunky Harry. But also in a week where he had been stripped of his honorary military appointments. It reminded everyone that he has served in combat and he can still do the whole soldier thing, something that I seriously doubt Prince Andrew would be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way in hell Andrew could do any of that.
I was so intrigued to see how the British media would cover this, because it's sort of complicated. After Oprah, who was sort of the scary American black lady, you have James Corden, who is British.
Yeah.
And from the perspective of the British press, he's one of them.
Yeah.
So I was very curious to see how they would navigate this kind of coverage. And it seems to be that the main thing was, once more, Harry overshadowing the Queen.
Yeah, the Mail led with, "When the Queen speaks, it's accepted she has a clear field." Palace brands wrapping Harry's interview unhelpful for overshadowing rare and important vaccine video after he blames press for driving him away.
They had sources at the palace who said the timing of the TV appearance had caused disquiet at the palace, especially with Prince Philip still in hospital with an infection. The source said, "When the Queen speaks as she has done about the vaccine, it is accepted that she has a clear field." Another senior source said, "This blurring of the lines doesn't help anyone. When the Queen speaks like this, it is her message that should be heard without other distractions. This lack of coordination is unhelpful."
My main thought when I saw this was, if the Queen can't command the headlines, then, that's not anybody else's fault.
Yeah, it's just, get used to it. There isn't going to be coordination from now on. That's the way it works.
Yeah, they're not responsible anymore for this kind of kowtowing to the Queen.
And her schedule. They had some quotes from royal experts as well.
Phil Dampier said, "As the Queen urges us to think of others, Prince Harry prances about in LA and makes the absurd claim that he hasn't walked away from the royals. What planet is he on? Hollywood, I suppose." Someone was very pleased with that line.
Not as pleased as commentator Richard Fitzwilliams, who told the Mail, "What is Haz thinking of, appearing on this sort of show and making an idiot of himself?" He reveals the Queen gave Archie a waffle maker for Christmas. Waffle is what he does. The script is puerile. It's nauseating to watch, all 17 minutes of it.
So funny. And the Telegraph said as well, "It was the old Prince Harry that we all know and love, game for a laugh and happy to send himself up. But it soon became apparent that the carefully choreographed recording had a much heavier agenda than casual chit-chat over tea and scones."
Yeah, it seems to suggest that this was kind of an undercover ad for Netflix or something. But the line that really stood out to me was the idea that Harry had a much heavier agenda than a casual chat, as if every single thing the royals do doesn't have an agenda.
Yeah. These people always know what buttons they want to be pushing, and they're always looking ahead, sometimes more effectively than others.
But it's never just a casual chit-chat.
No, they don't do casual. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, they're fucking paid to do this. Anyway, a source close to Harry told the Mirror that Harry has spoken to the Queen and she told him she was delighted he has found happiness. She only wants the best for him and his family. She has seen him struggle with his position in the family and had always had a great deal of affection and sympathy for him. And they said, "This is all about moving on. It was a very harmonious conversation between a caring grandmother and her grandson." I think there's some questions over when this call happened, but this was the splash on the Mirror during the week. So this was a sort of counterpoint to all of the stuff about the disquiet at the palace and how unhelpful Harry was.
Insiders at CBS said that Harry and Meghan were delighted with the way Americans had received Harry's Late Late Show appearance. And one insider said, "It was a masterstroke by Harry, Corden and the producers. All the talk around the couple's recent troubles, and it was like the prince of old had never gone away. America lapped it up and loved just how much Harry spoke about his family. The timing was superb."
Yeah, and this piece points out that the segment was recorded before the announcement that Harry and Meghan would be losing their royal patronages, but that just meant Harry's sort of offhand comments gained a new resonance, and the source said it was masterfully put together. It gave the impression Harry knew what lay ahead and was perfectly accepting of it all. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, what he said on the subject of service makes our quote of the week.
Yeah, he told James Corden,
We never walked away. And as far as I'm concerned, whatever decisions are made on that side, I will never walk away. I will always be contributing, but my life is public service, so wherever I am in the world, it's going to be the same thing.
I thought that was a really notable way of putting it.
Yeah, and I think it sets him apart a little bit from what we see of the royals in general, in that, if he has his patronages taken away, he's going to look for more work to do, or he's going to look to continue work with those same people in a different way, which makes him a lot more proactive than some of the other members of his family.
What about fit for a king or queen? Are you going to go with Harry and James Corden in their matching polo shirts and jeans?
Well, much as I would love for it to be Harry's spotless grey t-shirt, I think we should go with Meghan in her Oscar de la Renta dress for the Spotify promo she did for Archwell Audio this week.
Yeah, it was so exciting to see a new dress.
Yeah.
A very pretty dress from Oscar de la Renta's pre-spring 2021 collection. I'm sure many of you have seen it by now. It was a sleeveless drop waist dress with a flounce hem, had this kind of lemon motif with very beautiful appliques on it, and obviously a very comfortable shape for maternity wear. It had that kind of trapeze shape that is very popular. It was very popular last summer. Got kind of singled out for being very unflattering, but then you had the sort of fuck flattering movement.
Yeah.
Claiming it. And I loved in particular that she wore that gorgeous ring, the Exand ruby cocktail ring with the diamond pave band. It was a gorgeous colour contrast, I thought, and she had the lovely wavy hair, the smoky eye. She just looked so glam.
Yeah, and I think it was only last week, or maybe the week before, that I was saying that I miss Fit for a Queen being something spectacular, something glamorous, and I felt like this gave us what we'd been missing.
And I think a lot of people pointed out that the lemon motif seemed to be significant, suggesting when life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Yeah.
I know Megan's comments about podcasting really resonated with you when she said, we're using podcasting to drive powerful conversations that inspire, challenge and educate.
And I mean, whenever anybody asks me about HeirHeads, that's pretty much exactly what I say.
That's what we're doing here every week. First in line, Tom.
It's Harry for me, like, hands down.
Yeah. I really think the purpose of this appearance on James Corden seemed to be to remind people what Harry is really like.
Yeah.
To separate him from this very dominant narrative that we've seen a lot in the British press of Harry as a very churlish, humourless, stroppy kind of brat.
And it is easy to take what he said over the last, couple of years and make that image out of it, because it's mainly him speaking out about things that have upset him or angered him or things that he thinks should change. So, obviously the language he's going to use and the things he's going to say are going to reflect that. But like you said, like, this show just showed the fun-loving Harry who doesn't take things too seriously.
And I think that source at CBS was right in saying that it was masterfully done. Like, that tone, that balance is so hard to get right between the kind of like silly, frivolous bits and the more serious conversation. And I think they really nailed it. And, Harry came across as very personable and very easygoing, very funny, very hunky. He looked so good, so tanned and healthy and happy looking.
Yeah.
And all of that came across so well. Like, they really packed so much into that 17-minute segment.
Yeah.
And I think it really allowed him to reclaim the narrative about himself. Because even, I've found in the last year or so, like, totally gone off Harry. And we talked about it, was it after Finding Freedom, when we were thinking, like, God, like, was this worth it for Meghan? Like, this guy sounds like a bit of a, like, hothead and quite difficult to be around. And when he hasn't had as much of an opportunity to showcase his personality outside of his war on the tabloids or his earnest philanthropic work, you do forget that side of him. Yeah,
and it was nice to be reminded of that. It almost makes it worth them being friends with James Corden for so long to get something like this out of it.
Go that far.
But yes, I really enjoyed the segment. I thought it was really, really good, despite my reservations that I had about it going into it.
And I think it was a very clever sort of appetizer for the Oprah interview, because we know that is going to be a lot more in-depth. So to have Harry put out this statement, I suppose, where he takes responsibility for them leaving the royal family and speaks about his own reasoning behind that, to have that out there a week before the Oprah interview comes out, I think was a very smart move.
Yeah, it's a great primer. And I don't agree with the Mail who said that Oprah had been gazumped by James Corden.
There's very different things going on here.
Yeah, I mean, and this has made me very excited for next week. when...
The Queen's going to make her Commonwealth speech.
I think she's going to be discussing waffle recipes, actually, in it, which is pretty exciting.
She's got very strong feelings about organic ingredients. Sorry.
But the bus, I'm afraid, has returned to the depot. Everybody off. Next week's service will be delayed slightly to make sure we have time to watch, appreciate, and interpret the Oprah interview.
Yeah, so I don't know what day we're going to put out our next episode, but probably midweek. Thank you so much for listening to us today, and we hope you have a great week. Bye!
Bye!
Now the Spice Bus is racing across London through Trafalgar Square. Pigeons are flying up. And there they are, standing together in gale force winds, holding on for dear life.